Happy Memorial Day, everybody. This is the Living on the Verge podcast. I am Virginia, and I hope you had a wonderful Memorial Day, whether you're listening to it as the weekend is coming to a close or at a later date. I really hope that your 2025 Memorial Day is or was memorable, and I want to thank you for listening to the podcast, especially if you've followed along throughout the weekend. And I want to give you the last of our 3-part episodes for the Memorial Day weekend. And we're going to start off with a little bit of Bravo news. So the Real Housewives of Rhode Island is all the talk. Everybody's buzzing around about what's really going to happen. So everything I'm about to say is alleged. But allegedly, the husbands' names have been leaked. And I am going to have to fess up at this point and let you guys know I haven't done the research on the wives yet, but I promise you that as now that we are caught up, I will go back and I'll get the research on both the wives and the husbands, and I'll bring them to you on our regular podcast starting on Tuesday, and it'll be every Tuesday and Friday from now on. So let's get into it. The Richards family, and I mean Kyle Richards. Did you guys see this? Kyle and all her daughters are going to be on Family Feud. So there's a funny story. There's a couple of funny stories about the Family Feud. Back in the day, my uncles all auditioned for the Family Feud, and they got pretty far. I think they were maybe 2 or 3 groups in, and then all of a sudden they just came up to them. Nobody said anything. And they were let go. And one of my uncles was convinced that it was the other uncle's fault. And I know that this doesn't sound as funny as it would if I was naming names, but obviously I'm not going to name names. Anyway, that's a fun Family Feud story from my family. And then later on, there was talk of our family, meaning my sister, my brother, myself, all maybe forming some version or another of the Family Feud, but it never really came to fruition. And I would really love to see my kids do the same thing. So good luck to the Richards family. I hope you do really well with the Family Feud. Now, speaking of the Richards girls, did you guys hear that Sophia allegedly abruptly quit the agency and is no longer working for Mauricio? I don't know what that's all about. I think it's juicy. Maybe it's not juicy, but if it is, I will get you the details. I know that she's getting ready to get married, so maybe she's just making changes in her life. But at the same time, maybe with everything that's been happening, the girls are starting to choose sides. Who knows? But I will continue to dig, and I will let you know what I find out. Let's talk Real Housewives of Atlanta. The reunion seating chart has been revealed. So here's how it goes down. We have in the first seats to either side of Andy Cohen, Portia and Scheana. Is anybody surprised? I'm not. On Portia's side, we have Britt, followed by Phaedra, and then Cynthia. And on Scheana's side, we have Angela, followed by Drew, with Kelly at the end. I don't know what this says. I'm a little bit shocked, honestly, that Britt is right there next, up at the top of the batting lineup, I guess you could say. And then Phaedra, well, as of this recording, we haven't seen Phaedra on Atlanta, so I believe she comes out next week. And so we'll see what she brings to us. But for some reason, she made a big impact. She was able to hold a peach, and she is sitting right there high in the lineup when it comes to the reunion, having come on no sooner than episode 12. Well, we'll see what that brings. And there's speculation about the upcoming season of The Traitors, with regards to housewives, of course, and which ones might appear. So all of this is alleged, and there has been no official release from anybody on Bravo or anywhere else that I'm aware of that is credible enough to not use alleged. But what we are hearing so far is Mary from Salt Lake City, Nene from Atlanta, Candace from Potomac, and Teresa from New Jersey. So this is what we're hearing as far as which housewives may or may not have been invited to the next season of The Traitors. I will be covering it for sure because it is hands down one of my favorite Peacock shows. And I know that it's had a lot of buzz over the last few seasons, a lot of viewership, ratings through the roof. So why the hell not? Just today, In Touch magazine reported that Gina from the Real Housewives of Orange County has moved back in with boyfriend Travis. Do you guys remember that I talked about the reason behind the split? In fact, I believe in recent Bravo news, I covered the fact that Gina's getting dragged into the divorce proceedings. But who knows? All of this is alleged. And as far as I am concerned, if they were able to move back in and move forward in their relationship, God bless you guys. You guys are an adorable couple. You're really, really great parents and step parents. I love both of your spirits, and I wish you all of the best. And meanwhile, my girl Cynthia Bailey, oh honey, her ex-husband Simon reportedly turns himself in to serve his 18-month prison sentence over tax fraud. I can't understand how it happens that all of these husbands get wrapped up in the micmac of it all. And I don't get it. Is micmac a thing? I don't think micmac's a thing. Oh, well. Anyway, so guess what, guys? We're still in the middle of the palindrome dates. And if you're listening to this on the actual Memorial Day, then it is 5/26/25, which backwards is still 5/26/25. And I am so excited to cover my Arizona trip. But first, we're going to talk about the Valley. We have episode 6 of the Valley. We got to get caught up on that and on the after show. I have opinions about all the things, the Valley, and I don't know. I mean, I watched it twice, once for pleasure and once for sake of the podcast. You're welcome. It was rough to get through it the second time. I was tempted to fast forward, but if I'm being honest, I watched it when I got back from my trip from Arizona the first time, and I was pretty tired. So I was afraid I was going to miss something if I fast forwarded. I didn't miss anything. I could have done what I wanted to do. And that's not to bash the Valley. I am enjoying it, but not as much as season 1. The dark is real, and I can respect that, but I feel like they should have maximized on the episodes that we've aired so far to have advanced the storyline a little sooner, because I think that we're getting, Jesse and Michelle fatigue. I think that the whole Santa Barbara trip probably could have been done in 1.5 episodes versus almost 3. And then I have takeaways with regards to Zach and Jasmine and Nia. And so I think we should just get into it, right? Let's talk about episode 6 of the Valley.
You just felt like you stuff to have her No, oh my God. Please. She's just saying it's not fair that she puts her lap at every little dot to the toe. And like other people don't do it.
Well, you guys, Nia feels that the girls are not being her real friends. It starts off where episode 5 ended. They're still in the room arguing, and, they just don't, it's getting out of control as usual. And this is what I'm talking about with this show this season, is that I feel like the arguments are maybe egged on by production. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are smarter, wiser people in this podcast business that know better than me, but that's my humble opinion. And I think they could just advance the story and make it less tough to watch. Maybe they do it to extend the episodes. Maybe I'm just babbling and I should move on. Well, Jasmine said that she's just struggling with forgiving what Daniel did. Now we're calling him Daniel in certain moments. And then Danny walks in. He just came out of his nap. He's all refreshed and he has this look like, what's going on in here? Well, Nia tells him that things are going on and that things that are coming down are about Danny and Nia. And he just can't believe it. He is kind of puzzled. He wants to know what's going on. And Nia says, we're not talking about it in here. There's not good energy. Let's go talk about it in the kitchen or somewhere else. So they find themselves in their bedroom. And they obviously leave the door open so that this can be filmed. And they get in their bed. Danny immediately tries to console Nia as she starts to talk. And she immediately says, I don't want to be consoled. And I think that that takes a really strong woman to be able to say in the moment, that's not what I need. Guys, I think this has been blown out of proportion, especially because back at the deserted dinner table, Kristen and Luke are like, well, this went to hell in a handbasket really quickly. So they're going to head to the hot tub. And you have poor dejected Jesse wrapped in his little blankie. And he says, well, this went well. So Janet, of course, is back in the room telling all the girls about the whole Casa Amigos shot in the pantry. And Jasmine says, we know he has a drinking problem. We get that. Very righteous of you, dear. When Nia's explaining to Danny, she's getting really emotional because she's super upset. And the main thing she's upset about is that the girls would not talk to her and are talking behind her back. She says that's the most hurtful part. And like I said last week, they're conservative and more private as a couple, and that's their prerogative. I suppose it could be argued that they're not showing their lives, but if you look back to season 1, I don't really think that that's true. Well, Janet wants to make sure that the girls get across to eventually support Nia. If in fact Daniel is going through something with regards to his drinking, Janet wants to take a moment to tell all the girls, listen, we need to make sure that we get it across to her that despite what happened, we're here for her. I hope that that's genuine. I think it is coming from Janet. It seems to me, I want to always think the best of people, but Janet's been taking a lot of heat lately. So it's the last day at Santa Barbara, thank God. Zach and Brittany are talking in the room and they say they have 30 minutes to pack. And Brittany's freaking out. She does not want to have any confrontation. And they're getting ready to head back home. So they joke about planning an escape route for Brittany. Well, they weren't joking too much because they did end up leaving before everybody else. And then Scheana Shay makes her big debut. She and Michelle go hiking, I'm assuming, and I'm guessing it's Runyon Canyon. I'm going to get out there soon and I'll let you know. If it's true, I want to take a picture from the top where they were chatting. Anyway, Michelle is telling Scheana that Aaron is not willing to stay with her, even though he does love her. He doesn't want to deal with a crazy ex-husband. So Michelle's just devastated to think that Aaron might break up with her because of a crazy ex. She finally has someone who loves her and who she really loves, and she's just not willing to let him go. Scott, the live-in coach, goes to see Jesse. And Scott's the same guy that was the marriage coach and that talked with them together last summer in season 1. Well, Jesse says he's been working with Scott since then, and he's really upset with himself over his behavior on the trip. So he brings Scott in because he wants to know what he's doing, what he keeps doing that he keeps triggering himself like this. Scott listens to Jesse talk a little while, and then he surmises that since Michelle admitted to cheating, she projects it back onto Jesse, and that, the fact that, by saying things like he couldn't possibly have been faithful with you all the time that he spent away during their marriage. And then Jesse gets triggered and he starts to call her names. So he says it's just projection, and I agree. Scott explains that if Michelle could get Jesse to explode, then the focus switches to his behavior rather than what she did. And it is a perfect scenario for her. And he finds it kind of brilliant. Do you? Do you think it's manipulative? Or do you think Jesse's using this opportunity to kind of clear his name because he's had such a rough start to the season? I can't help but remember he told me that the first 5 episodes were going to be really rough, and then things were going to take a turn in episode 6. And this is episode 6. So are we Team Jesse now? Or are we still Team Michelle after the way Jesse behaved in Santa Barbara? Or do we hate them both and we want this whole thing to end? I don't know. You tell me. So Scott tells Jesse, let's talk about the path. The path is recognizing that your life as a metaphor is a garden and your attention is water and you're planting seeds all the time with your actions.
Is recognizing that your life as a metaphor is a garden and your attention is water. And you're planting seeds all the time with your actions.
Yeah.
Your attention is the water. Whatever you put your attention on will inevitably grow. So if you put your attention on those beautiful flowers, which is water those flowers, what's going to happen? But if you go and put a bunch of water in poison ivy, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You got to hold yourself accountable. No more acting like a dick. No more being self-important. None of it.
No matter what she does or says.
It's not yours.
I don't know about you guys, but I think Sean is being pretty poignant in this moment. So then he tells Jesse to scream in a pillow 3 times and he will either cry or laugh. So here's what I'm going to say to you. Either pause this podcast or later on today, test this theory. Did you cry? Did you laugh? Did something else happen? So we get to see Kristen and Luke's new rental, and it's super cute. It's super retro, and I totally love it. The front door reminds me of my Uncle Gil's front door back in the 70s, and it just had that vibe, like when you walk in with the panel that divided it. And, you know, I thought that for a first rental starter, it was cool. It's got a pool, which is going to keep them cool for the summer. And I really loved the little retro valley thing that they did. I have a picture of it that I'm going to post on Instagram, just in case you missed what I'm talking about. So anyway, Jasmine shows up to see their new place and they start talking about Danny. And Jasmine says that she feels bad that Nia cried and that she wants to apologize to her. But then in the confessionals, she talks about the fact that she's so bothered by this because it's really hard to be in a queer relationship and not taken seriously. She says she and her fiance will go to bars and men think that, it's okay to hit on them or touch them. And it's just a whole different game. And maybe that's why she's hypersensitive about it. So then we have the next scene where Luke and Danny go ring shopping. And it's so cute because Luke says it's, super hot outside and yet he has the chills and he's super nervous about it. And they go to none other than Kyle Chan's Designs, of course. Interesting side note, I bought the Taylor Swift earrings that Kyle Chan has on his website that Taylor Swift wore. And I bought those and I wore them for my son's wedding last summer. So that's a fun aside. But anyway, the ring ends up being a emerald cut FVS2 at 703 carats in 14 karat white gold with the sticker price of $14,000. Well, I was able to find it because it occurred to me that there's no way in the world that this ring at 7 carats could be $14,000 unless it was, of course, a lab diamond, which, a lot of people are going to these days because it makes a lot more sense than spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on something, and most people can't tell the difference. And then some people have other personal reasons because of the process, the labor process that goes into mining diamonds. Some people prefer the lab created process. All of that to say, I found it on Kyle Chan's website for $10,400 and something. I'll post a picture of that on my Instagram so you can see her ring. And we find out that the reason that Luke finally decided that Kristen was the one for him was when she was willing to drive 5,000 miles to Indiana with 4 dogs in tow And she gladly and willingly did that. And that's when he realized that she was just the love of his life. Really cute story. So we know that there's going to be an engagement coming up. Spoiler alert, we know they're engaged now, but how cool to see it all play out on the show. And can we talk about Isabella for a moment? I just think that little girl is super, super cute. She looks a lot like Jessie. She's sassy, she's smart, she's articulate. She seems comfortable in her own shoes and very decisive. She knew exactly that, yes, she did want the fries from Chateau. And also, Mom, like, bring me the key. Kind of funny that she left the key in the kitchen, in the refrigerator. And very interesting that she got the FaceTime and she was kind of like hiding and goofing around. I'm not reading anything into that. Kids will be kids. But it made me realize that she does enjoy her time with Dad too. And so anyway, Michelle shows up to drop off the key and it's really awkward. She's talking to Jessie through Isabella, but Isabella doesn't seem fazed by it at this moment. So I guess, we'll just leave that there because what else can we do about it? And so Jessie says after that he's just coexisting with Michelle at this point, but he thinks eventually it'll work itself out. So at Brittany's dinner, the one that she's having for Nia to hopefully smooth things over, the chefs are making what appears to be an amazing, amazing dinner. And it looks like they're starting off with a potato chip caviar course. I'm not sure it was a potato chip, but I for sure saw the creme fraiche and the caviar. And Chef Gino seems to be rocking it. He's going to make some sort of a salmon dish, I believe. Well, Mia arrives after, most of the girls were there. And she admits she felt really uncomfortable. She said she felt like she was coming to her funeral because everybody was wearing black. I think it was just a coincidence. Well, they all sit down. Chef Gino serves the caviar course. And then there's this awkward crickets moment. Like that, but longer. And so finally, Brittany breaks the tension and she apologizes to Nia for her behavior in Santa Barbara. And then, she basically says, I don't want to blame it on the drinking, but there was a lot of alcohol flowing and I was just in my feelings. And then Jasmine also apologizes and she says alcohol is not, the blame, but it was a factor and it's not an excuse. But then things start to get emotional. And Nia explains that she thought the most hurtful part was that they waited until she left the table to talk about her. And she doesn't feel that real friends do that. I agree with you. That is nasty mean girl behavior. And alcohol aside, if that's what you do, then you probably do that without alcohol as well. And I'm glad they apologized, but I don't know that it excused the behavior and how much this hurt Nia. Now, whether or not Nia's innocent, in this whole thing is neither here nor there. The fact that there's mean girl behavior and that they're talking about her behind her back, obviously to the point where they felt it necessitated an apology dinner, that says a lot. So, of course, Jasmine yet again recaps the Halloween story involving Danny and uses that as her reason for being triggered. Nia said they had a lot of work to do and that they really worked through what had happened. Things weren't okay after that Halloween incident. They had individual therapy, group therapy, and then marriage counseling and some really hard conversations, and that now they're in a much better place. That's their marriage. The way they choose to nurture their marriage is up to them. And it sounds to me, whether she's lying or not, I'm never going to accuse somebody of lying about what they've done to work on their marriage. But regardless, she has the right to not have to tell everybody what they did to overcome the bump in the road that resulted after, Danny's poor behavior on Halloween. I don't see how it continues to be an excuse. At this point, I think it's been like a year and a half since that incident, and they just need to let it go. Well, Michelle chimes in and she says that maybe the problem is that everybody thinks that Nia is always pretending that everybody is perfect. And Nia says that their perception might be because they don't know where she came from. And then she goes on to tell them this super sad, heart-tugging, emotional story of being homeless as both a child and an adult. And it's just, it's gut-wrenching. The story she tells about sleeping in her work parking lot and then being woken up by security and then having to get in her car and drive and sleep in the Ralph's parking lot instead. Pitching tents in backyards of family and friends growing up. It was rough. She says it was really rough. And it breaks my heart to hear her story. And it explains a lot about why she is so fortuitous and grateful and always seems to live her life like seeing the glass half full. But I'm not sure that it fits in as an excuse for why, I don't know if that the timing worked, I think is what I'm trying to say. Later on, the girls talk about how this may have been kind of said so that nobody would go after her in this moment, because who's going to come back after that with something mean? I don't know that it was calculated. Maybe Nia wanted them to understand her better, but I'm left a little bewildered as to the timing of this revelation, even though I really am grateful that Nia shared it, and I think that it took a lot of vulnerability on her part. Nonetheless, Nia says that all of those lessons taught her to be strong, and that's why she's always chosen to be positive. But the most poignant moment to me was when she woke up from sleeping in the back seat of her car, and she says she got into the driver's seat and she thanked God that at least she had a car. And that outlook could be passed on to many. Like, she lives in and owns her truth. And kudos to you. It made me like her that much more. So to all the other people, the haters, you could stand a dose of gratitude in your life and maybe, looking at things through Nia's glasses once in a while. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. The girls all start to console her, and then, everybody's backpedaling about what they said and why they said it. And then Janet just reaches over and hugs her because she can't believe that this is Nia's life. And then she reiterates that Nia does, that she could understand everybody's perspective, but she just wishes that they would have told her to her face. Then we hear from Janet. She tells Nia the Danny in the pantry tequila story. And she says that she was in a relationship for years with somebody who had drug and alcohol problems. Well, Nia interrupts her immediately, and she says, I feel like that's a really big statement for you to make. Danny doesn't do drugs, and so I don't understand the comparison. Well, Janet maintains that she was just sharing a moment in her life where she thought she could relate. I'm not sure. Are you Team Janet or are you Team Nia? Janet ends it all by having them pinky swear to go to the person if you have a problem straight out. And then in the confessionals, admits to us that she thinks that there's a 0% chance that that'll actually happen. Do you guys think that Janet is weaponizing what Nia and Daniel have been through? I don't know. What really upset me was after Nia left, the conversation continued and they kept talking about her. I don't understand. Didn't you get the message? All she said was, if you have something to say it to my face. So even though I could understand the need for a little recap in the evening, I don't think that they had to start going in on her and opining about her life all over again. It just seems so contraindicated. I don't know. The one takeaway I did have is that Jasmine was finally able to admit that even though she wants to move past it, she might not be over it yet. And I think that that was probably the most honest thing Jasmine has said on camera this season. Can we talk a little bit about Danny and Mia's overcrowded condo? Geez Louise, no wonder Daniel was fighting for the Santa Clarita move for all of this time. That I can't even imagine. Can you imagine the kids in the condo, all of the necessities of children, not to mention the Amazon boxes, which I'm not sure what that was all about. I'm not judging, but obviously they were bursting at the seams. And I got to just say, Daniel is a good husband. Like, he's taking care of business and holding down the fort while Nia is over getting consoled / gaslit by the girls. So Nia tells Danny what happened at the dinner, and she says that everything ended up fine, but then she tells him what Janet said about, the alcoholic and drug thing, and Danny's just flabbergasted, like his faces, his looks. Danny clarifies that the bottles were in the pantry because Nia tells him, the one thing that they did mention was the fact that you were drinking in the pantry. You had told me about taking the shot of tequila, but you didn't tell me that it was in the pantry. And he's pissed. He's trying to clarify that that's where they were keeping the bottles, and that's why I went in there to do it. And it sounds a little sus, you guys, but it could just be chalked up to drunk behavior. We do weird shit when we're drunk. I don't know. To watch them interact, I think it's very true that they have amazing communication skills. They don't hold anything back while still being kind and listening to one another. I find Nia to be very articulate and straightforward, like when she says, I don't want to be consoled, and then later she's like, okay, you can hug me now. So they have a cute relationship. I don't think it's for the cameras. I don't see how you would be able to fake that. Let's move on to Janet and Jason. So Janet is recapping the evening with Jason, and she says that she doesn't think Danny is where Jax is at, but maybe it's something worth looking into if you're hiding when you're drinking. And Jason starts to think that maybe he should talk to Danny because it's gotten to the point where he's not just hurting himself, but now he's hurting other people. I don't know. I guess we'll see more of this as the season progresses. I feel that if Danny and Nia are okay in their marriage and they feel that they have it under control, and if they made the amends and it's been accepted, then everybody else needs to move on and get out of their marriage. That's my opinion. I'm not apologizing for it. So that's basically how the episode ends. I watched the after show, and essentially there's a lot more chatter about the Nia and Daniel situation, with a lot more sarcasm coming from the people who spoke differently during the show. In my opinion, Nia has it right. There's no reason to badmouth her husband. But Scheana says it's all the hiding that's a problem, and that she did the exact same thing back with Shay in the day. When Shay was upstairs sleeping it off, she blamed it on him being up all night recording and so on and so forth. Is it the same thing? I agree with Nia and Danny that they have been relatively open. If you think back to season 1, they were very much open about their struggles with parenting and how it was affecting their relationship. And just because they are able to resolve it doesn't mean they're not being open, and they don't need to be, dramatic shit shows every episode in order to qualify as being open. That's my opinion with regards to that. But does that point to how the reality stars change after watching themselves on TV? Do we think that's why they're different season 2? Or are they just having a better time in their marriage and we're just capturing it on film? Do you have your partners back? Do you protect them when they get, to a point where they're in an awkward situation and you know that they're not in their right headspace and might do something, to cause a problem or to embarrass themselves? I would. I think most people do. I don't understand why that's so hard for them to understand. So they asked Janet about why she made the comparison between Danny and her ex with the drug and alcohol problem. And Janet says that the reason she did that is because she was just being vulnerable. Do you guys agree? I'm starting to question Janet's motives. I really like her, so I don't want to not like her, but that was a little bit shady. Jasmine doesn't think Janet was being genuine, and Janet says she'll never share anything vulnerable again. Janet accuses Jasmine of being the first one to call Danny an alcoholic. And then Jasmine says that she's not calling him an alcoholic, but thinks he might have a little bit of an alcohol problem. Isn't that the same thing? Isn't it like semantics? And like, who gets to choose who is and who is not an alcoholic? I mean, both of them know that they can overindulge sometimes, but they're parents and they're raising a family, and that's their primary focus. That's what Danny says, and that's what Nia says. And then Lala reminds us that being an alcoholic is a self-diagnosed disease. Boom, mic drop. That is the point. People could call you whatever they want, but until you realize that you have a problem in your relationship with alcohol, those labels mean nothing. Lala goes on to think that, or to say that she thinks that Nia puts on a facade of perfection because of her experience in the pageant world. And Nia reiterates that she is grateful and she doesn't want to live her life being bitter or angry. And she doesn't understand why it seems to her that that's what the girls want, is for her to like bash her husband. That's just not who she is. Jasmine says she can't help but think that Nia brought it up at the right time. And then Zach reminds her that it was Janet who brought it up. And it's true. Janet did bring it up. Danny thinks Janet is trying to cause problems for them. And I'm not sure that I don't agree. Well, then Scheana, Janet, and Michelle all think Nia brought up her past to deflect. And then Luke and Kristen seem to have figured out their future living situation, or at least what they wish it will be. Luke says if they buy a house in California, it will definitely be in Santa Clarita. And Janet thinks it's funny. Kristen thinks it's really hilarious that Luke is talking about buying a house in California at all, given how reluctant he was before. So maybe he's softening to us, guys. Michelle says hundreds of text messages and constant stress is what's causing Aaron to want to end things. And Michelle admits that if the tables were turned, she would probably want to end things too. So Jesse says that they're now at a point where they can talk civilly about their work schedule, but they still have a tendency to trigger one another. In particular, she triggers him, at least according to Jesse. And then Jax says that he and Brittany were doing fine until recently, that they are struggling now that the season started to air. And he said that they were fine until episode 2 aired, and then Brittany was pissed off all over again. Well, the Valley Aftershow is bringing us tea and more, I would say, contradictions as we continue to watch. People are doubling down. They say one thing on the show and then they, backtrack when they get on the after show, or they have resolution during the show and then they talk shit again on the after show. So my guess is that as these after shows begin to air, it's going to start some drama again. And I'm going to head back out to West Hollywood real soon and talk to these Valley folks and ask some questions about where things are going. Because now that we are, deep into the season, I have questions, you guys. So I'll try to get answers and I'll bring them back to you. But for now, we're all caught up on the Valley. Let's talk food and travel, guys. I just got back from the grand state of Arizona. I went to go visit my son. My baby turned 25. Happy birthday, Andrew. I love you. I went out there to spoil him a little bit. So we had some lovely meals and I'm going to tell you all about him. He lives in Chandler. So when I got in on Monday, we wanted to go to a humble but nice dinner. And he felt like Italian, so we found a place called the Sicilian Butcher. And after getting lost a couple of times and being a few minutes late to our reservation, we finally found the place. It was really, really surprising how busy it was. I had no idea what kind of a find I had just come upon, but this place was so delicious. So we walk in and we get a seat up toward the front, which didn't make me too happy. We were right by the front door and there was a lot of action, but it was busy. So we were just glad to be there. The reservations were gone the second I went back to try to change them. So I was glad we were able to even get in on such short notice. Well, I quickly realized it was restaurant week in Chandler. So they were slammed on a Monday because they had their restaurant week specials, and also because it's graduation time and all the things are going on in Chandler at this point. So there were no empty seats, and I'm not exaggerating. It was a fun environment, kind of loud, kind of bustling, nothing too crazy. And we got the menu, and the first thing that piqued my interest was a Ferris wheel of meatballs. And so after a lot of going back and forth, Andrew and I decided, let's just get that. It was the best decision we made. It was so good. It was such a cute idea. Like, what a novel idea. It was fun to eat. It's literally a Ferris wheel that has a little, like the little dipping cups that you get like sour cream and onion in when you go to a restaurant. So it had those inside, one meatball in each with a different sauce. So one was Tomaso's, which is like their regular, pork and beef meatball. Then they had, and I think it had like a vodka sauce. And then there was a sausage one that had an arrabbiata sauce, which was super spicy. There was an eggplant one that had the regular, like a marinara. There was a steak meatball that had a truffle mushroom sauce. There was a chicken parm meatball with a Parmesan sauce. And then there was a turkey meatball with pesto sauce. So Andrew's favorite was the turkey with pesto. I agreed with him. The chicken parm was a nice second. And the sausage meatball would have been delicious if the arrabbiata sauce wasn't so spicy. So that's the warning on that place, because I like spicy. So for me to say that it was spicy, it was really spicy. So after that, we were full. Our plan was to order an entree each. And the place specializes in Kraft meatballs and cannolis. So our idea was, let's eat our way to a cannoli. And because it was restaurant week, they had a menu that included a choice of a salad, an entree, and either a cannoli or spumoni for dessert. And it was $33 a person. Well, after having eaten the meatball Ferris wheel, which by the way was $28, I believe, we were already getting full. So what we decided to do, because we wanted to taste the stuff that they had on their restaurant week menu, was to split one of those entrees. So it came with the salad, and the salad that I ordered was like the field greens with green apple, and looked and sounded very interesting. And then our entree was risotto with scallops. And of course, we were already planning to take a cannoli home. So we were going to get the one that came with this meal and then get an extra. Well, we went ahead and ordered, and I don't want to spend too much time belaboring this, but the main issue that we had there, the food was delicious. I'll go back there again for sure next time I head over to Chandler. But the service, not so bueno. The server we had was one of those kind of indifferent, aloof servers. He was not very attentive, and was almost downselling us. When we asked about an entree, he basically implied that it was too much food. And so anyhow, we didn't let it deter us very much, because we were bound and determined to enjoy the delicious food. And it wasn't like the service was so bad that, it ruined the meal. But it was a little slow, and he never came back and checked. And if he did and you asked him for anything, he kind of just tossed it on the table as he walked by. And it just didn't feel warm and fuzzy, and certainly not like I would feel in, Nona's Sicilian kitchen. Anyway, all of that to say, the food was delicious. They did bring the risotto with the scallop. That was really tasty. It was a nice, tight portion, a restaurant week portion, I'm sure. And then I realized they hadn't brought the salad. So I was kind of bummed, because I was looking forward to having something fresh and crunchy. But eventually they did bring the salad, and he then came by and kind of, apologized. But by then we were done eating the risotto, and we asked for the cannoli and an extra one to go. And he brought it back, and kind of, they came in the cutest little gold boxes, but he just kind of placed them on our table and left the check. So we ended up having to flag somebody else down to ask for a bag, and then we paid the check, and the server that took us to go get a bag was super friendly, and she walked us over to the other side, which I would have never seen if we wouldn't have asked for a bag. And it was the cutest little area where you could get like cappuccinos, you could make your own cannolis. I think they had spumoni. So you could go there and just do that. That's a really cute idea for just like a date night or whatever. And I'll definitely go back. It was not too pricey, especially because, it was restaurant week, so we got the special. And we each had a couple of cocktails. I think I had one, Andrew had two, but I don't think it was much more than $130. So that's my review on the Sicilian Butcher in Chandler, Arizona. We got back from that, and the next day Andrew wanted to take me to his office to meet his coworkers. He has a pretty good gig going over there, and the plan was to head to Sedona for the afternoon. So after meeting his coworkers, he has a lot of nice people that he works with, and they speak very highly of my son, so I was very proud of him. We jumped in the car and headed 2 hours north to Sedona. And it was a beautiful drive. My new car, by the way, is kicking ass. It was a super fun and relaxing trip there. My dog did great in the back seat with her dog bed. And don't forget, she's 100 pounds. And Sophie, my little dog, was cozy with her seat heater on in the front seat. So all was good with the car and all was good with the trip up to Sedona. Andrew and I had some nice conversations, and we were there in a couple of hours. So Andrew had only gone there by coming the other direction because he went to NAU, so he would come there with his friends from time to time, and he hadn't seen the entire town. So I kind of drove him through town, and I had been to Sedona before. It's one of my happy places, and there's this one spot that I want to tell you about that is just something that is breathtaking and inspiring, and it'll put you in a really good mood. If you've never been to Sedona, you need to put it on your list of places to go when you are there. It's a small town, so you'll have time to do it. That place is the Sedona Airport Scenic Lookout. So Sedona has a little tiny airport, and it's up on the top of a hill that you got to drive up. But once you get up there, there's this little plateau. You have to pay $3 if you want to park. Otherwise, you can't pull over. The roads are really narrow, and it is a working road, and there are routes to hiking trails. But anyhow, you pay your $3, and you walk across the road, and you head out to this plateau where you can see the beauty of Sedona all at once. And I'm going to post a picture on my Instagram so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. But it really is something to behold. And Andrew was just as impressed as I'm making it sound right now. So we stayed for a while, took some pictures, took it in, and then we headed on back down the hill so that we could have lunch. Since I had picked dinner the night before, I asked Andrew to find us somewhere for lunch on the way up to Sedona, and he selected a place called the Hudson. It was an amazing choice. First of all, I'm going to post a picture of the view we had while having our lunch. We chose to sit outside. It was a beautiful day. It was not too warm. There was a nice breeze, and the view was just amazing. But we sat down in order to drink. Andrew got a beer. I never drink brown liquor, but I felt in the mood for a whiskey with the Luxardo cherries, and I think it had some other sort of mild little flavored liqueur in it. It was really strong, and I didn't finish it, but it was good. It was, something different. Then we ordered the ahi tuna tower, and it was beautifully presented, and it came with wonton chips. I missed soy sauce, and so we did ask for soy sauce, and I think we were brought like Maggi sauce, and it didn't taste the same, or else probably some really weird off-brand soy sauce. Anyhow, that kind of put a little damper on it, but if you don't normally put soy sauce on your poke or whatever, then you'd be fine without it. It was good. I ate a little. I let Andrew indulge in the rest of it. And then he ordered a bison burger, and he said it was amazing. It came with barbecue sauce, crispy onions, jalapeno bacon, lettuce, pepper jack cheese, garlic aioli on a brioche bun. It looked delicious. It was humongous. He only ate half of it, and he was beyond full. It came with a cute little basket of French fries, which were also very good. And that was $27, I believe. The Poke Tower was $25. And then I ordered a pastrami Reuben, and it was your, basic pastrami Reuben on marble rye. Also very good. I was also only able to eat half of it, and that was $22. I was looking at their menu, and they had a beautiful looking filet that the person on the table next to me was eating, and that was $55 for an 8-ounce filet. And there was a dry aged ribeye on the menu, 20 ounces for $68. So it was a delicious and a beautiful, relaxing experience. I highly recommend the place. The service was great. Our server's name was Rebecca, and she was attentive and nice, but not overbearing. We had a really lovely lunch, and then we drove back on down to take a little break because it was Andrew's birthday, and we were going to head to Nobu in Scottsdale for dinner. If you've ever been to Arizona, then you know that Scottsdale is bougie land. And boy, was it. As soon as you get to the area where the mall is, it's incredibly obvious that you've changed demographics and that you've changed socioeconomic statuses. The cars start to look different, the houses are different. So we get to Nobu in Scottsdale, and we have reservations at 7:15. We're a little bit early because you can never tell with traffic, but we got there and we were seated relatively on time. The first thing I noticed were the McLarens and the personalized Ferraris that you knew belonged to some basketball player, because we were in front of this gym. I can't remember what it was called. Andrew pointed it out. That costs about $500 to $750 a month for membership. So I'm sure that a lot of the players, professional sports players that live in the area, that's their place that they go. And there were definitely some cars in the parking lot that reflected that. Well, the place was pretty busy. There was some sort of a convention going on, and Andrew had just told me that when a pretty big group walked in, and it was pretty obvious that they were from some Silicon Valley situation. And so we got seated. I was excited and I was ready to spend whatever amount of money. I knew I was at Nobu and it was going to be a pricey dinner. So I wasn't worried. Andrew was super excited because in Arizona, good sushi is hard to come by. So he was excited that he was going to be able to order sushi and know that it was going to be good sushi because we were at Nobu. Well, he had decided after the big burger at lunch that he was going to go strictly sushi. So when the server went over the menu and explained to us how you're supposed to order, he had already decided he was skipping the first 2 courses, which was cold appetizers and salads and hot entrees, and he wanted to go straight on to the sushi. So we decided that we were going to order the edamame, and we ordered the yellowtail jalapeno roll and the house special roll, which was like a rainbow roll. And then we ordered a spicy albacore roll. So we ended up really enjoying it and ordering a second house special roll and another spicy albacore roll. The thing about rolls at Nobu is it's nothing like your local sushi joint. And he was very honest about that. It's very Japanese authentic, which means that if your roll says it's going to come with tuna, it's only going to come with tuna. It's not going to have tuna and cream cheese and, pea shoots and everything else in it. So he was right. The yellowtail roll came with yellowtail inside and a little slice of jalapeno on top. It came with 6 pieces, so it was very humble. And the first thing that the server did point out were that the portions were very small. So for a party of 2, he suggested ordering around 7 courses. So he wasn't wrong. The portions were very small, but surprisingly rich and filling. Andrew and I were laughing because even the nori tasted different. It was just different. The fish was beautiful, clean, fresh, tasty, and my favorite was the spicy albacore roll. I like the albacore sauce that they used inside. And the rainbow roll was really pretty, but it was the opposite of what we are used to, in that like a rainbow roll here in California, at least, is like a California roll, which is the crab inside with avocado and then the rainbow of fish on top. Well, at Nobu, it's the rainbow of fish inside with the nori and then the rice on the outside. Still very delicious. And that was enough to fill us. We kind of hit the wall, and I thought we were going to keep going, but we didn't. Andrew got a very cute birthday cake and little celebration. And I was spotting the black cod miso, which I understand is one of their specialties. And that was $48. It looked pretty delicious. Some of the things that we saw served had a lot of pomp and circumstance, but very little bang for your buck. I'm sure the flavors are delicious. But to give you an example, there was one dish that was $48, and it was literally like 4 or 5 mushrooms that were served in some sort of a sauce that smelled delicious. But the big deal was that it came with this covered bowl, and when you lifted it, there was smoke. So it's Nobu. That's what you're there for, and I understand that. But I think if I ever went back, I would probably go the route of the omakase. I bet you that's the way to go. It's $200 a person, and it looked like the group that walked in from the convention went that route, and they had flaming tables and all the fun going on over there. So maybe that's really the way to try Nobu, and maybe that's why it was a little anticlimactic. But, Andrew and I enjoyed our dinner, and we had a good evening. We made the drive home, and the next morning I got up and threw the dogs back in the car and headed back home. It was a lovely trip to Arizona. I recommend that you visit Sedona, and for sure head up to the airport if you're there. And I would say that if you want to spend a lot of money, stay in Scottsdale. If you want to spend a relatively decent amount of money, you could just stay in Chandler and you'll be fine. And last but not least, in pop culture, my very, very, very favorite movie, Lilo and Stitch. I went to go see it. I took my grandkids. One of my sons came along, and I loved it. I loved it. And it set a record on opening day of $55 million, you guys. So in case you've been hiding under a rock and you've missed it, they have come out with Lilo and Stitch, the live action version of the original movie. And they nailed it, you guys. Maia Kealoha, don't come at me for the pronunciations. I'm so sorry, I'm trying. Played Lilo, and she was just adorable. She did an amazing job. I would not be surprised if there are not awards down the pike for this little girl. And then Sydney Agundong played Nani, and she did a great job as Nani. They followed the storyline of the original movie pretty much to a T, and it's amazing how they're able to find those locations that were, where the original movie was set, and it's just done really, really well. I love this movie, so I'm partial to, I'm a huge Stitch fan, so I'm partial to this anyway, but the AI Stitch my heart, I swear, the eyes, the ears, the way it dropped. And then, of course, we have Chris Sanders that came back and did the voice of Stitch again. And it was just really good. I definitely think that it's a must-see on the big screen. And, take your kids or take the kid in you and go see the movie of the spring, in my opinion, Lilo and Stitch. That's it. You guys have been so amazing. You spent the weekend listening to my podcast, getting caught up. And I will be back on Tuesday with our new format. I truly do appreciate you guys. Our podcast is growing. and I want you to continue to tell a friend. But for now, have a great day, and thank you guys for living on the verge with me.